everyone for being here today to share PUB's report and work plan with the City Council. I know this has been a year of transition for the PUB with many new members and 2 new co-chairs. Both Dory and Heidi are joining us for the first time, at least in this capacity. I'd like to thank you two for your leadership and the lens that you bring. And I've heard that it's deeply rooted in the importance of equity, and I want to thank you for that. PUB consists primarily of volunteers who dedicate many hours each month to provide oversight of our 2 utility bureaus. It's also supported by staff from the City Budget Office, the Bureau of Environmental Services, and PWB, Portland Water Bureau. We appreciate all of your time, your dedication, and your partnership. And with that, I'll hand it over to Commissioner Fritz, who, as you can tell, is joining us by phone today. Good morning, Commissioner Fritz.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you, colleagues, for allowing me to take our phone. I apologize to you and to the Portland Utility Board members that I'm not able to be here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm just mucking around with the controls. Hang on. Is that the volume?
Okay, good.
There.
Really interesting watching the captions on television and also trying to multitask, etc. Anyway, first of all, I need to note that we all continue to miss Commissioner Fish, who established the Portland Utility Board, or PUB, and who works closely with its members for many years to help restore and increase community confidence in the Portland Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services. I felt truly honored to continue to work with Nick and to continue his work now, working with his staff who continue to oversee the Bureau of Environmental Services. And thank you especially to Commissioner Fish's Chief of Staff, Bernard Schmansky, and his liaison to Environmental Services, Asena Lawrence. I am very excited about the direction that the Portland Utility Board is taking. First of all, thank you to longtime co-chairs Colleen Johnson and Alan Warman, who retired from their service on the PUB this past year. Commissioner Fish and I appreciated your diligence and dedication. New chairs Dory Robinson and Heidi Bullock are doing amazing work and are here to tell the Council about it. I particularly appreciate my senior policy advisor, Christine Nieves, who served on the committee to help select new members and has done amazing work as my liaison to the Water Bureau. And with that, please take it away, the PUB co-chairs. Thank you.
Is it? I'm not sure it's on. There you go.
There we are. Okay. Hello. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. So thank you for those kind remarks, Commissioner Fritz. Much appreciated. I wanted to do a brief round of introductions for everyone at the table today. You may notice it's not just the co-chairs present at this meeting, and that is because of a desire Heidi and I have to make this board more horizontally led, so all the members feel like they have equal access to the chair's activities and increased transparency on our board from within. So my name is Dory Robinson. I'm the co-chair of the Portland Utility Board, and to my right,
Heidi Bullock. Good morning. My name is Mia Shabanovic.
Good morning, Mia.
Good morning. I'm Karen Spencer.
Thanks, Karen.
And good morning. My name is Karen Williams.
Thank you.
I also would like to give some acknowledgement to the lovely PUB members we have in the audience. If you would be so kind to stand up and identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Brian Laurent. I'm with Environmental Services. I'm an ex officio member and non-voting.
Thanks, Brian.
Hi, I'm Anna Brophy. I'm with Environmental Services, ex officio member.
Thank you both for being here today. We so appreciate your support.
I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Fritz shared earlier on the phone, and we as a PUB also wanted to say thanks regarding Commissioner Nick Fish's leadership, and we really have valued his his leadership and his vision for this board, and he truly was exemplary public servant and definitely led by example. So.
Right. So for everyone listening in, brief summary of what PUB is. So PUB stands for Portland Utility Board. It is a community-based organization of a gathering of volunteers tasked to advise the Water Bureau and BES and City Council on measures affecting water quality, utility rates, and other environmental impacts. We also do budgetary and policy oversight of both of those bureaus. And I think that we're a very unique and valuable independent advisory group, especially as we go through and speak today. There's this wonderful experience that happens on PUB where new ideas are always emerging, and we do our best to make sure they're in alignment with the Bureau's strategic goals, and if they're not, that benefits and burdens that we are creating are equally distributed amongst the outcomes. So briefly, some goals for today, right? So the purpose of today's meeting is to follow up on the annual report that we shared last fall, and also to share with you our accomplishments and priorities, and hopefully to hear a response to that, and ideally your vision for the PUB and what you'd like advisory bodies like us to be doing today and in the future. So with that, I'll let Heidi take it away.
Yeah, so first and foremost, as Mayor mentioned, there was quite a bit of transition over this past year and a complete change in leadership that occurred. Over half of the board is new PUB members just this year. Also, we had change in support staff from the city budget office. We had some transition staff that had been supporting us, and those positions are now filled. So it was a year of change, I'd say. But it also was one that was very exciting for the PUB. We also were really successful at recruiting new PUB members. We had a huge pool of applicants this year. It was really exciting. It was pretty diverse, and so we were really excited to see that recruitment process be so successful. Oh, and so I just also, the board wanted to thank you guys for appointing and approving those new board members. We know there was challenging times, and we were really appreciative that you went ahead and pushed forward the applicants that we chose. Thank you.
This year has been a year of transition with the new board members, as Heidi mentioned. Thus, one of our priorities has been internal board development, and we consider that to be a significant accomplishment. There is a sense of teamwork among the PUB, and that has been evolving. We continue to work on increasing collaboration, communication, and inclusiveness overall. One example of that is the openness and inclusiveness of our new co-chairs, Heidi and Dory. We believe that this has strengthened PUB in terms of providing different perspectives and helping us to sharpen our focus to get the work done that we need to do. Another priority, a very strong priority of PUB is racial equity. And this has been a focus throughout all of our meetings since I've been on the board. We've worked closely with the Portland Water Bureau on developing the Low Income Assistance Financial Program. That was work done prior to when I joined, but we recently received a report on that, and we are very grateful to the team for being able to present that work to us. The Financial Assistance Program, which had just started this year, saw a 36% increase in folks being able to apply and use the program, so it's a substantial benefit to our community members. The program will continue to be a focus for us.
Excuse me, what is the income level that program is available for folks who need assistance?
I understand that there are 2 tiers, and that those tiers are based on the Portland median income, and that recently the program has been expanded so that we're looking at the cost of living for Portlanders, not just overall. For more detail, I would have to defer to someone a little bit more knowledgeable on those details.
Thank you.
So, however, this is going to be a continued focus of PUB and a high priority, and we're looking forward to working this winter and the spring on evaluating the program, particularly through the lens of racial equity. We want to ensure that the community is aware of the program and that we are reaching the members that are most needy.
Thank you, Karen. I'd also like to highlight one of our accomplishments was the letter of support that was drafted for premium pay for our multilingual staff at the city. We understand that the draft preliminary recommendations are in the final vetting process, and we believe that this will have a positive impact on staff and therefore the community and the engagement that our board has with the community.
Another accomplishment we're very proud of is PUB's participation in the administrative review committees, at ARC for short. And ARCs are an opportunity for community members to bring their case forward to city staff when they have a bill or a charge or something that they feel is unjust or inaccurate, or in some way they want to appeal that. And PUB participates as an objective and outside observer, participant in these processes. PUB members have participated in more than 15 of the ARCs over the past year, and each of these are a 2 to 4 hour time commitment, so we believe it's a fairly significant volunteer commitment that the PUB members make to the ARC process, and it's very important. We, as well as we believe bringing that outside perspective, feel that we're able to help facilitate the communication between the city staff and the community members, in that we are kind of a layperson's view of the process and often ask clarifying questions about process that kind of help facilitate that communication. And as well, each of us that participate in an ARC bring our experience back to the full PUB and converse with our fellow PUB members about what we learned, what that experience was, and sort of brainstorm ideas about how we might improve the process and improve our participation in the process. Something we're particularly looking forward to in the coming year is applying perhaps more scrutiny to the ARC process, again through a racial equity lens, trying to understand more about the demographics of the folks who are accessing this program and where particular appeals are coming from geographically in the city, related to where perhaps infrastructure investments may or may not have been made. And we're also particularly interested in looking for patterns and trends and diving a bit more deeply into the data. And very much look forward to working collaboratively with the city on doing that kind of a more in-depth analysis and making sure, again, folks who can most benefit from accessing this program feel that it is accessible, fair, that it's, meetings are held at times and places that don't discourage their participation or feel intimidating in some way. So that's something we're going to be looking closely at and look forward to working with the city staff on that, improving that process.
Great, thank you.
Well said, Karen. Thank you so much. The ARC is something that everyone on the board, but particularly me, feel very strongly about. Issues of accessibility and changing a community-type meeting from being very ivory tower, which is what it currently is, to a conversation where parties feel like they can be expressing their complaints with the city would be very much needed improvement. So another accomplishment.
Excuse me, how do people learn about this opportunity if they question their bills? I mean, is that something that's on the bill that, you know, if you've got a complaint, this is what you do? How do people know that this system exists?
That is a very good question, Commissioner Hardesty. To be frank, I don't know the answer to that. I know that recently ARC meetings have been, I think it is the Water Bureau that has become more of a formalized, open to the public meeting. But I don't know how that is communicated. And that's another strong point that those bureaus could take as feedback, as how people know that that's even a resource when they're contesting a bill. So thank you for that.
And thank you for your work on that, because I didn't even know it existed, so.
Absolutely. Another accomplishment we had was piloting a new approach to budget. This year, we decided to dig deep into a few priority program offers rather than attempt to cover them at the same depth in the entire within the entire bureaus. So we highlighted for you a few changes, I guess maybe like not really a change, like a lens that we're now looking through, and that is capitalizing on the program offers approach to budgeting introduced last year, streamlining and making the budget workload more manageable, allowing PUB to provide more focused feedback that will be more helpful to bureaus, and engaging PUB earlier and more effectively at the policy programmatic level that ultimately drives the budget. This is still very much so in beta mode, right? We're experimenting with this, and we expect this to be an iterative multi-year process, where as PUB engages with this new format, we're sharpening it, edifying the bureaus, if I may, on what the best format is for us to be evaluating the budget, if that makes sense. And also, a thank you to Bureau leadership for their willingness to pilot this with us and to let us review it. It's hard kicking off new things and having lots of feedback and criticism with it. So I appreciate their patience and their extreme expertise with us. It's so valued.
Another accomplishment of the Portland Utility Board this year was our response on the Bull Run filtration project. We were able to quickly come together to give thoughtful input about the project, particularly given the complexity of the issues and the controversial nature of the issues. It was a very inclusive process led by our co-chairs, and we believe that the output of that was a very thoughtful response that reflected the differing perspectives of the board members.
And we also look forward to working closer in the future with the City Council and the Water Bureau team in expanding those goals in terms of equity hiring, in terms of environmental crisis, energy, also operation and maintenance of those new filtration plants. We're very excited to be able to share this information with our community bases and for our community to use us as a portal to communicate back with the bureaus. I'm very thankful for this year for being given the opportunity to serve on the utility board. I come from a very small New Portlanders community here, and so to be able to share their concerns in terms of high water rates or high sewer utility rates, and to be able to see how those CIP projects make an impact to low-income New Portlanders community is huge.
Capital improvement projects?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
The
CIP.
acronym, sometimes people who are watching at home don't quite know what we're talking about when we shift to.
So capital improvements projects definitely make an impact to our ratepayers and our community base, but also to be able to share the community values to influence those projects so they're more sustainable for our community is an honor for me to be on this board. And I also want to say huge thanks to the leadership to create that environment where all of the members feel very at ease to share that information. So we're definitely looking forward to more work with both bureaus, so both BES and Water, in shaping their capital improvements as well as their operating budgets, and being that communication portal between our community and the decision makers.
What's been the biggest challenge in being able to translate Water Bureau ease into community conversations? What's been the biggest challenge in making that transition?
So I can take a first stab at your question. It's an excellent question, and I faced that challenge several times. And it's being able to clearly communicate the risk the utility is trying to mitigate with that capital improvement project investment. And with our community, finances are a challenge, especially for people on fixed income and low income, right? So to be able to communicate clearly what it means for such a large investment, how in turn they're investing into sustainability and the water quality and the continuous of supply in case of an earthquake or some other environmental hazard. It's been an interesting and very exciting opportunity. But most of the time, after spending several minutes with them and talking through it, they understood the values of the investment.
Thank you. I just want to say that you are an impressive bunch. I have experienced many boards and commissions in my time here. But you are a very impressive bunch, and I am so grateful that you're volunteering your time to serve the city of Portland. Each of you have very unique talents that are clearly on display here today, and so I am very grateful that you decided this was a good investment of all that free time you got, right? Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty.
I was thinking the same thing.
Sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, but Ascena's over there giving us the stink eye, so we better not try it.
So we're just getting close to wrapping up. I think, where are we? Sorry, I lost my place. But I did want to just extend thanks to the staff of both bureaus, Portland Water Bureau and BES. We're never without support, I will always say, and and obviously Eliza and Amy from the city budget office, we are well supported, and that's made a huge difference, I think, in the success of the board and us being able to come prepared and be thoughtful in our responses. So thank you.
If I could ask you a question, and you may have just thoroughly answered the question, but I wanted to find out the degree of alignment between the pub and the bureaus, and it sounds like you are in alignment, or at least you're getting the support you need. But are there any notable areas where you don't feel that you're in alignment?
Time? Sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean, I meant it facetiously, but on a serious note, yeah, it seems like their schedule and their time frame of when they want to have deliverables produced can be putting us in a mode or position of catch up, or where we feel rushed to make a decision. But everyone on the board, as you both noticed, they are excellent people and they have strong personalities. And so we make it very clear when we do produce those deliverables that, we felt rushed when we were doing this. And if we had more time, imagine what we could produce. So it seems like for me, and I encourage other members to chime in, and in the back, it feels like time is something that we don't always match up with, if that makes sense.
That's a really good point. I just want to acknowledge that's not just pub. That, we hear that from a lot of our boards and commissions, that for those of us who are working here all day long, sometimes it's easier for us to be speeding ahead and not fully recognizing the fact that we're talking about citizen volunteers who have complete lives outside of the work that they're doing on a volunteer basis for the city. So I think that's a good reminder and a good admonition, and we have the Bureau directors here hearing what you are saying. And I also just want to say personally, I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing. You are the watchdogs for the public. When people say, well, is City Hall accountable, or the city commissioners doing what they need to do to act in the best interest of the public, you are actually the representatives of the public in this process at the front line. And it's so critically important, and I share Commissioner Hardesty's thoughts that we have a really talented group of people here. And as a ratepayer and as a resident of this city and as the mayor, I'm really grateful for your service, and I thank you for it. Commissioner Fritz, I don't know if you have any questions. I know it's a little harder to engage by phone, and we're very, very appreciative that you're taking the time to join us by phone. Did you have any follow-up questions or comments?
I don't think. Well, I do have some comments. It's kind of interesting watching the 10 or 15 second delay on Portland Community Meet on Open Signal versus by audio. So I actually taped the session so I could watch it again in full later. I am just
For fun.
I'm so grateful to Commissioner Hardesty for your comments, Mayor Wheeler. This is an amazing group of people, and you can see why Commissioner Fish and I have been so happy with the direction that the pub has taken. Thank you, each one, for coming here this morning and for all of your work. It is a huge time commitment, and you certainly dealt with a lot of concerned community members, shall we say, particularly with regards to the filtration plant. Obviously, people who are concerned about their bills are also needing a lot of your attention, and I appreciate that you are going to be looking both at the low-income assistance and at the appeals process altogether, along with collections and how we do that. I'm particularly excited about the resolution to adopt a set of priority values and expectations. I love your support of the recommended option to guide the design and implementation of the filtration project. Something that was not mentioned, I think, was the pub's letter of support for the city to adopt a pay differential policy that will pay employees who have bilingual proficiency a bonus, which Cynthia Castro and Yesenia Carrillo on my staff have been working on. So just a really wide range of focus, excuse me, in particular looking at the equity issues, particularly with regard to racial equity, and really focusing on what can community members make a difference in. I think perhaps some of the members of the pub have experienced what I have over the past couple of years, that spending a lot of time delving into a pipe project and considering whether it should be a 60-inch pipe or a 50-inch pipe is not necessarily good use of volunteers' time. But the issues that you have been dealing with are absolutely things that community members have the expertise in. And so I am thrilled with the work that you're doing, and I particularly appreciate you taking the time to put together this report and also to come into council today. Again, I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person, but you can rest assured I am absolutely beaming here at home, and you've made my day.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. I guess on that note, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to thank Commissioner Fritz for her participation with PUB, particularly at the October PUB subcommittee, and the request for, putting a balance on the values that are guiding the Bullrun Filtration Project. Commissioner Fritz actually attended a few of those meetings, and one in particular had quite a high community turnout, but Commissioner Fritz engaged with everyone in the room, and I can't really find the best word to describe that level of bravery, but also desire to really strongly interact with community members other than like sort of a chutzpah. And it's really admirable. And for our board members, we really appreciated having the commissioner's presence there. And so as I give kudos to Commissioner Fritz. I hope it will provide also some incentive for you, Mayor Wheeler, or you, Commissioner Hardesty, and even though Commissioner Udaley is absent, any of you, the invitation is open to join any of our advisory body meetings and see what we do and provide your input. So thank you, Commissioner Fritz.
Well, thank you so much for that. My only last question is, how can we be more supportive as the Portland City Council to the work that you're doing?
I encourage everyone to respond if they want, but I do have a bit of a special request. I do have an answer. So one of the things that Heidi and I got to do before Commissioner Fish passed, rest in power, we asked him that when we provide him and his office feedback on issues affecting his bureau, that he provide a response to us. Whether we're giving him letters or it's data that we're producing, we want to know that he's read it. And if we could have representation, not just from his office, but from himself, that he's engaging in this, we so deeply appreciate it. So I very bravely asked that, and Commissioner Fish didn't miss a beat. He was like, absolutely, I will do that for you, and that's something that I'd like to start doing for more boards. And so I very respectfully request the same from the both of you, if it's possible.
And what is the specific request?
Deeper engagement or verbal or written responses to information that we provide your offices, but from you.
So I can assure you that if you write my office, we will write you back.
Okay.
We write everybody. And we would especially write you back, right? And quite frankly, I won't speak for the mayor. I'm sure he has some opinions of his own. But I was just going to say, most nights, most of my time, 9 to 9, is in meetings, right? And so if there's a meeting where it would be useful to have me come, my advice would be to let my office know early. And if I can be there, I'll be there, right? I don't want to make a promise I can't keep, but I can keep that promise. We will respond to all communication.
Good.
A, and B, if there's an event or a meeting that you're having that I will add value to your agenda, then please reach out and I'll be there.
Yeah, no, this is actually, I'm glad you raised this point, because it's one that my staff and I spend a lot of time thinking about, which is how to prioritize my time. The most valuable thing I have is time. And I have limited time, and I have many, many responsibilities in many bureaus, and I just inherited 2 more. And so I want you to know overtly what the plan is. The plan is to keep both the Parks Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services together, because we have an important relationship between BES and Parks, as you're certainly well aware of. Commissioner Fritz will continue to be the commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau. Commissioner Fish's staff will continue to operate the 2 bureaus just the way they've been doing under Commissioner Fish. What I would request is, if you want my direct engagement and my personal involvement in decisions, think long and hard about which issues you need my personal engagement on, because I truly just have limited bandwidth, so I don't need to respond to every single issue that comes through the pub. I trust you, and I trust the bureaus, and I trust Nick's team to be able to continue to do the work that they've been doing. But if there specifically is something between now and at least May, and maybe as late as mid-August, that you need my focused attention on, or you need advice, or you need a connection or direction, I am more than happy to personally engage. And so that would be sort of my, maybe my negotiating position on what you requested, is I'm happy to help, I'm happy to personally engage, but think about how you can best use the limited time I have to move your mission forward.
Absolutely. I'll take your word
Alex,
for
if I
it.
might weigh in on that.
Please, Commissioner Fritz.
I know that you've seen this morning that this is an amazing group of volunteers who are independent and very capable of doing work. My philosophy on boards and commissions has always been to visit once or twice to get to know each other, but then to let them be independent and to do their best work without council not interference, but participation even. What I would request is, Mayor, is that your staff and Commissioner Fisher's staff, I know, will continue to attend their meetings. Christina Nieves on my staff attends every meeting. She's going to be moving on to a new position at Common Cause, and so I'll take this opportunity to thank her for her work. Yesenia Carrillo is going to fill in interim. But I think that that's the appropriate way for council members to show our interest and make sure that we know exactly what's being said without necessarily... sometimes when a council member shows up, the focus becomes the council member, I have found, rather than allowing the great community members to do their best work. And so that would be my suggestion. Certainly, I agree with the co-chairs that making sure that we have written responses to their input is really important. And, you know, when there are opportunities that having somebody on the agenda might encourage more people to come, they've been doing a really great job of getting more interest in the board. And as was mentioned, the large number of applicants we had for the board is evidence that that is working and that the board is working well. So that would be my recommendation as far as prioritizing our time. The most important thing, I believe, is for us to truly read, mark, and inwardly suggest and consider all of their carefully made recommendations as they send them to us at council.
Yeah, that's great advice, Commissioner Fritz, and I thank you for it. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you all. Anybody else?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks to everybody for participating. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Fritz. We know that it's a difficult situation, but we really appreciate your participation as well.
This is Karen Williams speaking, and thank you to our co-chairs. I would like to offer one response, perhaps more to the question of support from the bureaus, but we'll look to the leadership of the council as well. And something that would be very helpful for me as a new pub member is understanding how the various items that are brought to us for deliberation and recommendation connect to larger priorities and larger citywide strategic objectives, and understanding that we're making recommendations on projects that are taking place in two bureaus, but we're one city, and the services that are provided by the city are interconnected. So an example that might make this a little bit more tangible would be if there is a project that is a priority for one of the bureaus coming forward that has to do with, say, seismic resilience or emergency preparedness. I'd like to better understand how that connects into the larger citywide plan for seismic resilience and emergency preparedness. So that would help me be able to just have a more informed point of view to then deliberate with my colleagues and then make a recommendation.
Excellent.
Mayor, I think that's a really good point. Thank you. I have a couple of other thank yous. Amy Archer Masters and Eliza Lindsley are the staff to the pub. They've both been hired this year, and I think that the pub would agree that they're doing great work. They are actually supervised by the City Budget Office under Jessica Kennard, which again is a safeguard to make sure that they are truly independent. And so I greatly appreciate Amy and Eliza for their work. I want to also again thank Chief of Staff Sonia Shkmansky and Asena Lawrence in Commissioner Fisher's office, and my Chief of Staff Tim Quayle and Christina Nieves in my office, and all of the support we've gotten. I am very pleased with how well all of the different entities are working together. I also recognize what was just said, that we can still do a better job of making sure that we respect the pub's priorities and give them the information they need. Also want to thank Mike Story, the Director of the Water Bureau, and Gabriel Solman, the Deputy Director, as well as Mike Jordan, the Director of Environmental Services, who are really on board with supporting and giving information to this wonderful Community Volunteer Commission.
So one of my kind of requests, or maybe something that can be expanded on, is maybe a more robust onboarding process for the new pub members. These people are amazing and they bring a lot of community values when they join the board, but they don't necessarily have the information regarding the detailed operations of both bureaus. So it would be, a lot of times what happens is we have questions for the bureaus, and so they go back to the bureau, and it takes a long time and large amount of effort for the bureaus to craft answers back to the pub members so that we feel comfortable and educated enough to make the recommendations to the city council. So I would consider that maybe Commissioner Fritz and you guys consider a more robust onboarding process for the pub members that include possibly shadowing deputy directors or specified personnel within each bureau so that they do have that working bureau knowledge and they feel comfortable. So we kind of minimize the amount of back and forth responses.
What is the current onboarding process look like?
So, for me, it was, I believe, a little more different because I have worked in both bureaus, so I have a very, very vast knowledge of how things operate in both bureaus, both water and BES. But I believe we had initial meetings with the directors, and they shared their strategic plans, their vision for both bureaus, and we met with the commissioners. But we really didn't get into kind of like that mid-layer information. For example, how the decisions are made within the bureau before they reach the pub. And so we do have that mid-layer questions that then go back to each bureau, and what I understand is they take quite some time because they want to make sure that the information that they're sharing are accurate to their best ability. So just more education and a little better crafted onboarding process would really benefit both the bureaus and the board.
Thank you so much for that. I see staff over there writing furious notes, so I suspect that there'll be some changes forthcoming. It is helpful, and thank you for that. The fact that you've had experience in the two bureaus made your onboarding a little easier than it would be for someone who's never been inside a city building before, right? So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
I think
second.
our onboarding for both boards and commissions and for city staff still has room for improvement across the board. So I agree with that comment.
Yeah, I completely agree. We
Actually, for city council members too, right, Commissioner Hardesty?
yeah, there's truth to that as well. I think when people come on to a board or a commission, particularly one that deals with highly complex and sometimes technical issues, that added time pays back in spades in terms of the output of the committee. And I'm thinking of an analogous example. We created a brand new committee. It was the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. And we looked at the old model that committee was based on, and the old model didn't include a lot of onboarding or education or help understanding how to look at the issues or who was in charge of what or who the key players were. And so we took that feedback and we used it on the new committee, and it was very intentional and it was intensive and it was standardized, so that when new people come on, they all go through the same training process, and it just helps give people a grounding in a sense that when they get onto the committee, they're stepping into a process fully informed and fully ready to go. So that's advice that sits well with me.
I wouldn't say not just this board and commission either.
That's
I
right.
think across the board, we could do some improvements in that area.
Okay. So I think we're just going to wrap up on just kind of, we've already mentioned where we've been, and we just want to talk a little bit about where we're headed for our priorities for this coming year. And a lot of them you've already heard about. It continues to be the low-income assistance program evaluation. A lot of what Karen has shared about the metrics and digging in more. Also continuing to work on the budget process improvements and what makes sense for both the board and Bureau staff so that we can try to be more efficient with both people's time, both time. Also, we really want to try to get outside of downtown core and get more into the community. And so we want to really dig and evaluate options of hosting our board meetings outside of city buildings, basically. And so whether that's it's going to take a little bit of work, obviously, and investment probably from the city budget office as well as the board members. We'll also continue to work on and evaluate any board development work that needs to occur. And also, obviously, the Bull Run filtration project will continue to be a priority for the board. And so at this time, I guess we just want to hear, you've heard a lot about those programs and our priorities, and just, I guess we want a sense of how those fall with your priorities and making sure that maybe we're not missing any priorities that you all might have.
No, I think you've got the right priorities. I think that you're really are focusing in areas where you could have the most impact, especially as it relates to how these bureaus impact the general public, right? As the mayor said earlier, I certainly see you as the conduit between government and regular community members who are trying to also understand these really complex, very big issues. So I don't think that you've missed. I don't think you've missed a beat. The question is, like, how do you get so much done in the short period of time that you have? One of the things I did hear you say, though, is that information flow could be improved, right? And so, and I understand when you're talking about some of these really big capital improvement projects, that you're talking like, you know, a $1 billion project, right? And sometimes you're being asked to make decisions, I think, without enough time to really contemplate and consider, weighing the pros and cons. And I hope that, I mean, I don't think any of you are shy, but I hope that each of you use your power within the committee to actually push back when you need more time, when you need more information, right? Respectfully, of course, but, you know, to make sure that you are as informed as you can possibly be, so that when you make a vote, you know it's a vote based on the best facts that you have at that time. And so I picked that up in a couple of the conversations. So, and I know the city is always in a state of emergency, right? It's like everything happens under an emergency. So, but don't let our emergency become your emergency, right? Use your thoughtful, deliberative process to give us really good advice.
Yeah, and I'd like to build on that as well. And I hope that under pressure, we look calm, cool, and collected, and even a little bit chill at times. There's three ways that quickly come to mind. Number one, because you are a resident board and commission, you're made up of people who live here, you're seen as ordinary folks with no particular political agenda. You provide credibility that the council cannot provide in and of itself. I like to believe we're a credible body, but the reality is once we become elected officials, in the eyes of many people, all the credibility we've spent an entire lifetime building up seems to evaporate in a few minutes. And therefore, the role of citizen oversight becomes increasingly important. And the role that Commissioner Hardesty just mentioned around information flow, communication, your kind invitation for us to participate in the process and have the back and forth conversation builds credibility in the eyes of the public. Now, let's not kid ourselves. 99.5% of the public isn't going to be aware of the conversation you are having, but they're aware that you are there having a conversation on their behalf, and that is worth its weight in gold. And so I think that as we continue to look at some of these large-scale investments, you provide that level of credibility. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to work together to further define what that looks like, what the right issues are, where we should be focusing our attention on. And you should give us your independent and unvarnished view of how things are going. And so I appreciate that important role. The second area is just thinking about what you were saying, Karen, around emergency preparation, resiliency, and in particular our concerns around seismic issues. But I would also add, the force of nature as being an important consideration in what we do around infrastructure. We have no monopoly on the truth on the city council or even within the city infrastructure on what we should be prepared for. We have some ideas, and we have our views, and we have our planning process, and we have our bureaus focused, but it's really nice to have completely objective outside eyes asking us hard questions on some of these infrastructure investments about how resilient we're really being for the future. And I've appreciated some of the comments that have been made in years past. The third area is one that I think many people in the public would probably see as the most important thing that we do when it comes to the oversight of our utilities, which is keep the rates low, keep the rates in check. And as the Commissioner of Housing, by the way, I've only been the BES Commissioner, as you know, for about a week, so I'm still trying to formulate what questions to ask. But I've been the Housing Commissioner for over 3 years, and I know that when we're building housing and creating a supply of housing, that's only part of the question of how you keep housing affordable in the community. But the ongoing cost of maintenance, upkeep, and utilities weighs heavily on a lot of people in this community, particularly those of lower income or those on fixed income. And your work there, particularly during deliberations we have around the budget, when we have deliberations about rate setting, your thinking, your independent objective thinking on whether or not we're making the right investments, whether we're prioritizing the right things, whether the bark is worth the bite in terms of what we are asking ratepayers to bear when it comes to making investments in infrastructure. I value that input. And when Commissioner Fish was here and Commissioner Fritz, through her leadership, when they ask these questions about are the ratepayers protected, are they getting the ROI that they need, does the increase in investment, is it justifiable in terms of the potential impact on rates? Those are important questions, and I listen intently to those, and I think you can continue to provide us important feedback in that regard. So those are the three areas that come to mind for me. Accountability and credibility of the overall process and governance generally. Second of all, the question of emergency preparedness and resiliency. And third and finally, making sure that you continue to prioritize the impact on rates of significant infrastructure investments over our utility system.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, and thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner Fritz, do you have any input for our board?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
I wanted, so this is Dory. I wanted to know, Commissioner Fritz, if you had any additional input or comments for our board on what we presented today.
Thank you for offering. No, I'm really happy with how this presentation has gone and the work that you're doing, and just look forward to supporting you as much as I can.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Any other questions by my esteemed colleagues?
You could give lessons on having a 2-hour work session that lasts an hour and a half.
An hour, Commissioner, just an hour.
Just an hour.
Just an hour? Oh, my bad, just an hour. Even better.
Yeah.
Even better.
Very efficient.
Just feels like an hour and a half because when you come in this building, right, time just kind of goes away.
So,
Well, they packed a lot of information into an hour, so
And
I
Indeed they did.
Mia, do you have a comment?
Yes, I had just a quick comment. Thank you so much, Mayor, for those comments. Aging infrastructure is definitely of concern for both bureaus. And I am super excited to say that both Water Bureau and BES have integrated components of risk mitigation and identification into their strategic plans. And I know that BES is looking at transitioning the whole organization to be more of a risk-driven organization and more of a sustainable planning organization to make sure that we don't have crises as often and that we foresee those replacements before we are interrupting service to our community base.
I think you raise a really good point. I mean, we have a enormous backlog of maintenance and infrastructure improvements at the city of Portland. In fact, we have the new URM unreinforced masonry work group that just started last month. Which will be meeting for at least a year, coming up with some recommendations really focused on nonprofits and faith institutions. It's really frightening when you think about how unsafe we are as a city. And it is my hope that over this next year that we will develop a citywide priority list, because it's kind of hard for us to tell other people they've got to fix their stuff when our stuff will be falling down around us if we don't fix it too. I'm hopeful for a more citywide integrated approach because, while there are limits to how resources can be used in water and BES, there's also this citywide expectation that if you're in a city government building, that it's not going to fall down around you in an earthquake. We're also in a liquefied gas area, and that keeps me up at night because as someone who has most of the first responders, I'm very concerned about what happens if a liquefied gas explosion happens or we have an earthquake or something like that. These are really serious issues that really require the best thinking of all the best minds in the city of Portland coming together and helping us figure out what the priorities are. So I didn't want you to think I wasn't answering your question. The reality is I actually don't have an answer for your question just yet, but we're certainly working on getting those answers and being very transparent once we do about how we set our priorities and what work we start getting done first.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, Mayor Wheeler, and Commissioner Fritz. I actually have one last question, and I wanted to know, I suppose, your perspective on how the recent composition of the board is. So I opened with saying how we're trying to make this board more horizontally led, and we are making a severe commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity, and not just the issues that are presented to us, but in the members that are represented on the board. And I know that there's always going to be the work that we're doing from the city. It's always going to exist. But let's say that the work changes, or that ideally we do such a great job that we influence the bureaus to institute systems that no longer require our existence or our feedback in that way. And that's ultimately what we'd want an advisory body to do, right? To have that incredible impact on who they're advising. And so I don't know if you can answer this today, and it's okay if you can't, but I encourage both of you to think about the larger vision for advisory bodies at the city and what they could be used for in the event that they accomplish their goals. What other things could PUB be doing in the environmental sphere that could really continue to raise Portland up as a landmark city?
Ooh, I like your thinking.
Well, something comes to mind right off the top of my head, and that is, in order for us to achieve our 100% renewable energy goals and to achieve 100% renewable electrification by 2035, the private utilities in this community are going to have to lift heavily. and they're going to have to invest in new technologies, new ideas, new energy sources. And at the same time they're making those investments, they're also going to have to be highly cognizant of the rates that they're charging the public, because there's this balance between moving towards carbon-free energy while at the same time not pricing people out of their housing, as we were discussing earlier. So you don't get into the gas utilities or the energy utilities more generally, but the work that you do and the learning that you have had looking at water and sewer related issues, I think could be more broadly applicable to some of the same questions about innovation, technology adaptation, and rate management that the private sector folks are going to have to go through too. And so there's probably a sharing and a learning opportunity to be had here, and a collaborative opportunity to be had here as well. And I know, just having met with, I meet regularly with the utility folks on the private side, and I know they're looking for the best ideas and looking for support from the community for what they do.
Thank you.
I think resiliency after the big it, when we think about, right, the earthquake that we know will come in our lifetime, maybe, the first thing you think about is how are we going to get resources to people who need them? And water is absolutely one of those critical issues, resources that people will need after disaster. It would be interesting to see if you, in conjunction with our Bureau of Emergency Management, had a plan for how we would restore water as quickly and efficiently as possible after a big event, right? I think that's something that in your free time you could actually like start helping us think through, right? What does that look like? What we know is that low-income communities will be hit hardest, right? And will have the least amount of resiliency to come back from it. And how do we make sure that we're prioritizing people over, say, people over buildings, right, as an example, right, and those kind of disasters. So right off the top, that's the first thing I thought about, right? Would love to have your thinking on that.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty.
You're welcome. And excellent work. Oh, I think one more thing. I'm hoping that the City of Portland's advisory committees are evolving in a way that we understand that people are making a choice to volunteer their community expertise to the City of Portland, and that we are putting these committees together in a way that really values people's ability to still be present for their family. I have a commitment that I don't do meetings that don't include childcare and don't include food and don't include transportation assistance if necessary, because I believe that it is our responsibility to remove those barriers so that people can fully participate when we ask them to volunteer their time. It's just been a pet peeve of mine before I got to the city, and I know the city has been moving in this direction very slowly and methodically, but it's my hope that over the next year, it will become more unified across city bureaus and across advisory committees, that we are prioritizing providing stipends to people that help them with childcare and transportation, and that we are removing those barriers, because I hear it over and over again. You want me to volunteer, but your meeting happens at 10 o'clock downtown and, blah, 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 right? That's not, we have to do better in that, and that's on us. That's not on you, but you pushing us to do better will help us do better.
Will do.
I want to say thank you so much for that comment. That's amazing.
Well, thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Hardesty, Commissioner Fritz, for your time today, for taking time out of your very busy schedules to meet with us, to hear what we've been working on and our vision, and thank you for providing us yours. Is there any other deliverables we need to tackle today before we close out? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We're adjourned.